The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Podcast. We've got a podcast now. It's episode 220 of the Pesky Report. I'm Ed Hand, and I am here today with Brandon Brewer. How are you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing very well, Ed. Thanks for having me. And if you noticed, for those that are watching on YouTube, we just showed our video, our video package that's highlighting the 2023 Boston Red Sox, and a notable person was not included in that video, and that's Xander Bogaerts. And that's because he now plays for the San Diego Padres.
Wait, what? When did that happen?
Oh, sometime in the offseason, he decided not to sign a contract with the Red Sox, and A.J. Preller decided to snort a huge line of coke and offer him 12 years to make him like 87 years old whenever he's done with that contract. But he's a Padre now.
Oh, man, that's pretty upsetting. Why would the Padres do that? I kind of wish we had somebody from the Padres to come on and explain to us why the Padres would go and give Xander Bogaerts an 11-year, $280 million deal. Like, are they competitive? Let's go. Oh my God, we have someone.
Who is that with us?
Boo!
Oh my God,
Boo!
he's right.
That's
he's right there. Holy crap! You scared me, man.
What's going on, guys?
So, from Locked On Padres, we have Javier Reyes joining us to talk a little bit about the San Diego Padres and their wild and incredibly awesome offseason if you're a Padres fan.
Absolutely, man. And look, it's what I think is so funny about the Pods is, as long as I've been doing Locked On Padres too, not that I'm like a hipster about this stuff, but I'm very like, all right, look, they have Manny, they have Tatis, starting in 2020. I mean, it's like, all right, cool. I really love Trent Grisham. And I was like, I love that guy. It was one of the things that I got right for that year, at least. I was like, all right, I like this dude. I think Davies can be fine, Lamet, all this stuff. And then I was like, all right, let's build off of this. Let's get some good kind of solid pieces. And the guy just went out of control, AJ Preller, like, ever since that moment. I mean, this is that offseason in the span of 24 hours, they traded for Darvish, Snell, and signed Ha-Seong Kim, who at the time was the biggest KBO prospect. And that was in 24 hours, and that's still not the craziest like time I've had being a Padres fan. It's not even in the top 3, maybe. That's the craziest part. Like, then there's the Tatis extension, then there's the Manny extension, then there's the trade for Soto, then there's even the Adam Frazier trade was kind of wild. It wasn't good, but it was still wild that it happened, right? It's still kind of exciting. And then you have Xander Bogaerts, your beloved Xander Bogaerts, who, on top of being with the Padres for 11 years, which we'll discuss, I imagine, it also gave me the thrill because I am not a Boston fan. I have a hatred for Boston, some would say. Seeing that Boston Globe article of Chaim Bloom looking like the end of a sad artsy movie on a plane, just like dumbfounded, or whatever the quotes were, whatever the things that he was just shocked that apparently Xander Bogaerts was going to get paid. That's what it sounded like. And it just brought so much joy to me. And, but not as much joy as being on this podcast, I will say. I mean, I'm thrilled to be here, guys.
Well, we're very happy to have you here. And I got to tell you, you actually have a lot in common with Red Sox fans because they kind of hate the Red Sox too this offseason.
That's very true.
And a lot of last year. And honestly, since 2019, they've kind of hated the Red Sox. So, I'm just saying you might want to reconsider your differences and start thinking about your similarities.
Hey, I will say I'm finally going to be hopefully visiting Boston this summer. Might catch a game, might see some friends that I know, so that could be cool. And in fairness, I've had a lot more hatred for Philadelphia sports over the past couple years, to be honest. Because, Boston sports is slightly down lately, slightly. They still got the Celtics, but
And the Bruins,
it's just...
Bruins, if you care about hockey, are
Yeah,
very
Bruins.
good.
Bruins. I've heard are doing some good stuff. So for me, it's just like, all right, I'm losing a little bit. I imagine they'll find a way. You'll get your Bill Simmons take that just drives me right back in. You know what I'm saying? Like some Boston Globe thing will go nuts again, and I'm like, all right, the hatred's back. But yeah, it's been crazy, man. It's been absolutely crazy, and I think that the thing with the Red Sox as well is it's kind of crazy to see that we're here, where the Padres are the ones spending and making all these trades, and the Red Sox are hoping that their biggest addition was Kenley Jansen, or the Yoshi could be the other one too. But you get my point. Like it's just kind of crazy the period we're in baseball, and I think it's exciting, and I think I'm unbiased by that. I really think that I don't have any bias saying that. I'm very objective.
Where about in Jersey are you from, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm from the greatest town in the world, Morristown. It is a fantastic place. It is lovely, and it makes up for the very masochistic relationship I think I have with sports. And in fairness, I think what we all do. Let's be honest. This whole like miserable fan base thing, I think everyone's miserable. Like, is that not the point? Like unless you're like a Pats fan for a while, you know what I mean? Like, unless you're one of those teams that really dominated for a while, like everyone kind of hates themselves, and they're like, "Why am I doing this?" It just makes me sad watching this. Like, I don't get it. I guess it's the hope at the end of the tunnel, but I don't know. I feel like it's a much smaller percentage of everyone being like sad blank fans, sad blank. I think that's kind of everybody, man.
It's an interesting observation, because that's something that I notice here a lot. It's like, why are you guys so bummed out? Like, is this just a Red Sox fan thing? And for the longest time, I thought it was. I thought it was just like, oh, they're just like high off of like the 86 years thing. It's every single team. Every team hates their ownership. Every team hates their team except for like the one guys that have the World Series. And a few months later, they're right back to hating their team again, like it was a fluke or something.
It's crazy. And to rag on Philly sports more, I mean, one of my closest friends were watching the Eagles-Falcons opener. I think it was the year after the Eagles won the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And I don't even feel bad. I'm not even like, you guys have like 8 Super Bowls. Who cares? But it's after that. It's the first game, and he's getting actually livid at the team. I'm like, it's the season kickoff. I have said this on a show before, and since we're on Red Sox, I can say this because the Padres fans hate when I bring up the Chargers. I would actually consider, I would have considered at one point in my life giving up a finger for the Chargers to make the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, there was a point in time, maybe when I was in high school or middle school, where I've been like, yeah, what's the least important one? All right, cool. Get rid of that one. I will absolutely take it. I want to win the Super Bowl. This is all I care about. It makes me happy. And then I have this greedy, punk who's just like, oh, I'm upset Nick Foles didn't throw a touchdown in the first quarter. I think we're just a greedy and sad bunch in a lot of ways. So we have to monitor that, I think, as sports fans. We need to do better.
I think that's very true. And I think as a Boston sports fan in general, we are very spoiled. Like you said, we've had 6 Super Bowls in the past 23 years for the Patriots. We've had 4 World Series championships. We've had an NBA championship. We've had
greatest turnaround in sports history too.
NHL championship. Like we've had it all. And for our age demographic, we've basically grown up winning a championship every other year in one sport or the other. And now it's like we're kind of in a drought period where the last championship we've seen is like 5 years, and we are losing our minds. It's insane.
What's going on here? I don't get it.
Yeah, and like the Celtics were in the NBA Finals last year. 2 years ago, the Red Sox were 2 games away from the World Series with a team that wasn't even supposed to contend. It's like
I do think that there's a difference between hating why the Red Sox are bad versus, you know what I mean, like the exact specifics of what happened in the Mookie Betts trade and Benintendi and all that stuff. But there's a difference between that versus being like, wow, it is miserable. No, it's not. All right, I agree. You should be mad, but tone it down a little bit. I guarantee you, everyone, 2002, if you said here all the trophies that you guys just mentioned, but you'll have to deal with this guy Mookie Betts who gets traded, and then you'll have to deal with some weird Patriot stuff and whatnot, and you might have to deal with one of your star pitchers being the biggest bigot in sports, everyone would say yes. You know what I mean? I would say yes. I'd be like, yeah, let's run it. You know, it's crazy. And Brandon, I know you could. I know you know.
Trevor Bauer, in no way. Trevor Bauer does not pitch for the Boston Red Sox. Just want to point that out, okay?
It's just like I don't get it sometimes. And I'm a big like movie pop culture fan. Don't get me wrong. That area has plenty of nincompoops too, and it gets wild out there too, in a completely different way. But yeah, it's just funny. I think we just like to be mad, and I think that's what's pushed my theory that umpires are great and referees are great. I think you need a heel in sports. I've been waiting to unleash this take for a while. I love it, man. And this has nothing to do with strike zone and all that. I just think we need a heel. I don't think people want to admit that it's fun. It is fun to complain about refs. It is fun to complain about umpires. Maybe a little bit easier if your team is not involved. And we got to make sure you don't have a Saints-Rams type of no call with a pass interference. Like, those are pretty heinous, right? But I think it gives us stuff to talk about. I really do. It gives us a common enemy that no matter who we are, we're like, yeah, you know what, though? I hate that referee or that umpire or Angel Hernandez, to use a baseball one, right? Like, there's just something about it. It adds a flourish to things, you know?
That's the human element. That's the human element that's missing. It's not that things are inaccurate. It's that there's a common hatred for everybody. And what is more human than that, right?
And that's so true, because like me as a Red Sox fan, I can talk to my friend Zach, who's a Cardinals fan, and we can both be like, man, Angel Hernandez just sucks.
Yeah. Exactly.
We can bond over that hatred for one guy. That's a solid take.
Sports are about hate. It's crazy. Sports are about hatred. That's what they really teach you. It's crazy.
What do you hate about the Padres then? What do you hate about their offseason that saw them, as we said, just doing copious amounts of uppers and throwing like $1 billion out at a bunch of players? What's the hate about that?
I mean, you could use any gif of Scrooge McDuck or whatever, jump into the pile of money. Like, I've seen them all at this point. I love how we spent all this talk about hate and whatnot with sports. Oh, I love the Padres. There's nothing to be upset with about them. Don't get me wrong, 2021 was pretty rough because of the collapse in the second half. You had all the Tatis and the Manny fight, right? And then 2022, you have the beginning of that with Tatis being hurt, and then he misses the rest of the season for the suspension. Like, there's still upset things, but I think for the most part, for me at least, and I don't think that every Padres fan has been like that, at least according to Twitter, which isn't a great sample size. I do 100% admit that, but I don't think they always know what it's like to have superstar players on your team, because watching this is just I mentioned the Celtics, you know, one of the great turnarounds in the history of sports, that one title that they had, right? Unfortunately, it gave us characters that would bother me for the rest of my sports life. Like, just they can never leave. The clout they receive from that title is unmatched. But I think with the Padres, they're up there in terms of great turnarounds, because the Padres, this is a team that had Adrian Gonzalez, who we mentioned before, like putting up MVP caliber, top 10 MVP moments, playing super well, being great for the fan base, and they just refused to pay him. And nowadays, it's like, Manny Machado is my top priority. Most of the time, you hear that from owners, and you're like, all right, whatever. 2 days later, they extend him. Like, it cannot be emphasized enough that while there are questions about the years and was the Bogarts contract too long, was it risky to extend Tatis when he was too young, Darvish, all these guys, I really think that the Padres should be a little bit immune from that, because they've never had anything like this, not just in terms of winning, but in terms of the spending. So for them, it's like, we don't care. We don't care if the A's turned around right now and they went out and they signed Ohtani, they signed, you know, Carlos Correa, who knows if he is going to have to sign with another team.
That,
yeah, right? Like, if they all of a sudden did all that and they gave overpaid contracts and all that, I think A's fans would be like, who cares? Because we're not known for this. We've never done this. So I think that they should be shielded from that type of criticism, whereas your Dodgers, your Yankees, some other teams who have won certain ways before, I can see some people being like, I don't like the deal we gave to Rodon or whatever and whatnot. While the Padres would be like, cool, we'll give that guy 20 years. We don't care because this team has never been like this before. And I think it's awesome for the sport. And it's been, a lot of kind of insider, little chicanery going on in the league. Where like, oh, so now you're making some tax committee group after the Padres started spending a lot and the Mets, but you don't care that the Orioles are spending less than the budget for like Moonlight Best Picture, right? Like that's kind of the issue we're at right now. Like I think that's the problem, and I wish that a lot of the TV personalities, a lot of the bigger personalities, not all of them. I don't want to do the media stinks type of thing because that's kind of tired at this point, but I really wish they would bring up more. Wow, they're doing this instead of how are they doing it? Instead of doing that, you should be asking, why aren't other teams doing this? Like, tell me the Chicago White Sox don't have money? Yes, Chicago, famously an unimportant city in the United States pop culture and everything, right? Like, that's just crazy to me. And I think that a lot of teams could do something similar to the Padres. Maybe not all of them, but at least similar. And I think that's what I wish people's takeaway would be from this team.
I mean, looking at the team itself, what of the moves this offseason was your favorite? Because you mentioned, like the Machado thing happening 2 days after they mentioned it. That wasn't the only extension. That wasn't the only move that was as many figures as it was. I think that, like, there's a lot of moves to unravel there. But which one, when they did it, when you heard about it, you had the most visceral, like, oh, fuck yes?
I mean, it's pretty obvious. And I will say, I think that Preller, while has made a lot of big splashy moves, I do think that Nelson Cruz, yeah. That's what I was just about to say. Nelson Cruz, Matt Carpenter, Adam Engel, right? Like, it's just, I think that he does deserve a little bit of credit for some actually pretty savvy under the radar moves, but also the big blockbuster things too. And my favorite is obviously Xander Bogaerts because it also happened fairly out of nowhere. Like there were some rumors because you had the Trey Turner connections. And then they were talking about Xander Bogaerts, and everyone's like, don't they already have Ha-Seong Kim and Fernando Tatis? So it was a weird thing. And they just said, screw it, we'll figure that out later. And it happened around like 10 p.m., I think, East Coast time, which was wild. So then I immediately had to head downstairs and record my show. That, just the thrill of that stuff, it doesn't get old. I didn't think they were going to do it. I thought they were going to do my dream was Michael Conforto this offseason. That's funny.
So you wanted to be the Giants, basically.
Yeah, because I thought, look, they'll get Tatis back. Maybe we extend Soto and you have Manny. I didn't think they needed that, but I'm not gonna say no. This has been one of the most consistent batters in baseball. Sometimes the defensive stuff with defensive runs saved and blah 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 blah, whatever. But last year he was good defensively, so I'm curious to see if that translates and goes forward. But this guy's been there, and he's been a top-level prospect before, and he's just been with a really winning team, too. That's another thing, and I think that there's some value in a guy who's been there and done it before, and done it for a team that certainly has high expectations being from Boston. So I love that, and they'll figure out the positional stuff. Ha-Seong Kim hopefully could play a good second base. Xander Bogaerts, hopefully the defensive stuff is legit, and he's going to keep it going. At least for the next few years. Obviously, there will be a decline as there is for everybody. But, hey, if he keeps it up, which is totally possible, I know that baseball's scary because guys will just, swan dive off of Mount Everest sometimes. But, hey, I just appreciate that they did it. And I think that maybe there's low-key some Hall of Fame potential here. There's legitimately a case to be made that there's like 4 Hall of Fame players in the Padres lineup right now. And that's awesome. And I appreciate every amount of it. And I can't wait until there's Shohei Ohtani rumors that I'm going to viscerally, emphatically say no way on my show. And then it'll happen. And then I'll have more stuff to be excited about. It's great from a cultural change perspective to be like, a lot of teams, I'm talking a lot, man. A lot of teams, your Rays, your Guardians, they go far and then they don't do anything. The Padres did that. They went far. They beat 2 100-win teams in the playoffs. Most owners, they're like, okay, great. That'll placate the mob for a little bit. They didn't do that. They said, actually, that's funny. We're going to go get Xander Bogaerts now and steal him from the Red Sox. That says so much and does so much for fans, I think. Aside from the player, just the willingness to keep going. Because in baseball, it's the only sport where consistently contenders would rather trade backwards and not spend versus going forward and trying going for it.
Do you think that there's a realistic chance that they manage to extend Soto to one of these gigantic deals also? Because at some point, like, do you think that they're just going to be like, okay, we've spent enough, or do you see that only happening after a World Series, if ever?
I've been going back and forth on Soto because I think the prospect haul they gave up suggests we basically blanketed our farms, so we have to kind of keep this guy. It's only that makes sense. But I mean, 2.5 years of essentially Ted Williams reincarnated isn't the worst trade in the world, like especially for this year and the next year. But I'd have to imagine so, and I think there's been little things like Machado mentioning, oh, hopefully Soto next in his press conference, right? Like it's possible he did decline a big deal with the Nationals when he was there, but it was also the Nationals, not as great of a team. Maybe the AAV wasn't to his liking, right? So I think it's possible. But I do go back and forth because maybe they get really, it's like the girl and guy meme where he's looking at the other person. Maybe they see Shohei Ohtani, this next offseason, who they've been linked to already. And they say, how about instead of that, we just go give Ohtani the bag and really throw this team into a next level stratosphere of like, this is 90s Yankees now. Like this is a level of blockbuster stardom and just cultural change that we haven't seen in sports in a while. If you were to do that, I mean, Ohtani would be nuts, but I think it all depends, man. I think it all depends because Soto is yours right now. You don't have to compete with other teams offering him deals. So again, I just go back and forth, and should they? I won't oppose it. That's just my take these days because the Mount Crushmore possibility would be pretty wild for the Padres, and the days of Seth Smith being their best player are kind of gone.
Oh, I remember the Seth Smith days. I used to live in San Diego back in 2013, 2014 timeframe. But to be the 90s Yankees, you have to start winning World Series.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's great to beat a couple 100-win teams in the postseason, but if you don't get over that hump, you're not actually fulfilling your goal. The 2018 Boston Red Sox beat a couple 100-win teams on their way to their World Series, the New York Yankees and the Houston Astros, and then they beat the 90-something win Dodgers in the World Series. So to get over that hump will be the next thing for the San Diego Padres, and the time is now. John Cena's theme song says, "Your time is up, my time is now," because right now is the San Diego Padres time, and it's funny because 4 or 5 years from now, all of these contracts that look great right now with all these superstar players, they might be pushing walkers around on the field. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I mean, it's equal parts. You have to praise them for the fact that they are completely doing what we just talked about, where they have never done this before, unlike, say, the Yankees. Yankees have spent money in the past, so for them it was like, fans are like, okay, I've seen this before, but will we win? That type of thing. For Padres fans, it's like, I have never seen this before, and yeah, I'd like to win, but let's start with the fact that this is crazy. So it's an equal balance there. But then you're also right with the contracts aging poorly. The bad side of this is it could be the Angels, right? You could be in a situation where you've got Hall of Fame players, and it's totally possible that, let's just say by, baseball history standards, that Tatis and Soto are the two that are there that are extended. And since they're young, their prime days aren't wasted. They're still really great. Well, the Angels have Ohtani and Mike Trout right now, and they're probably not going to finish very high in the division. I don't think they're going to, and that's kind of crazy. And they've got these bloated contracts with Rendon. Maybe he'll be better, whatever. But the bottom line is they've missed a lot, and they've given out huge deals from Josh Hamilton to Albert Pujols, obviously, and it just never came true for them, and it stinks. So that's the downside. The downside is Angels, and then the upside is 90s Yankees, where you're like, wow, rule the sport.
You win 3 or 4,
awesome. Yeah, you win 3 or 4. Hey, if you just won 1, that would change everything, and it would keep fans for a very long time. Keep even more fans that I think you're already gaining from just this the fan fest stuff, the fact that they're in the news all the time, the fact that they're becoming a meme. My friends are sending me memes about the Padres just extending people and signing other great contracts. Like it's equal parts. But you're right. 5 years. If someone told me, hey, Manny's he's a good player, You know what I mean? Like, he's good, but he's not, something special anymore. Wouldn't surprise me. And if you told me they're struggling to get 88 wins, totally possible. I mean, again, they did a lot of moves after the 2020 season, and 2021 was kind of a mess. So it's not impossible. So it's hard though, right? Like, you got to balance it of praising them for trying, because there's way too many teams that rely on people thinking that Moneyball is the only way that you win titles, which it categorically just isn't, right? You do have to spend, and also being like, hey, the Angels is not a fun fan base right now, and I feel horrifically bad for them because of how much talent they're wasting.
Yeah, how bad does it suck to have 2 of the top 3 players in baseball and still finish in the bottom third of your division every year?
Oh my God. The poor Angels fans, man. And on top of that, to rub salt in the wound, that Art Moreno was apparently going to sell the team, and then he didn't. Oh my God. I felt so bad when I heard that. I was like, these poor fans, that's all they were probably looking forward to this offseason. They were like, all right, but at least maybe he'll sell the team and we start a new era. Nope. He's keeping the team. Oh my gosh. It's probably because they know Ohtani's leaving, so no one wanted to buy them. So
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Angels too, they have to be good this year. Like, they objectively have to be, or I mean, you're not going to have Ohtani come back if they're in last place again. It's just not happening.
Yeah, it's just, I feel so bad. Because Trout really, and I know people have complained about lack of personality. Whatever. That guy's on any other team. Like, if that guy's on the Yankees, that guy's on the Red Sox, or that guy's on Astros, even Cleveland, whatever. I mean, it's just, I just think he ascends so much.
Put that dude on the Rockies when they still had Charlie Blackmon cranking out homers. They had
Cargo,
Trevor Story coming up as a rookie.
Yeah.
Put a Mike
Arenado,
Trout.
dude.
Arenado, Tulo.
Yeah.
Throw those guys out there. Yeah.
Put that team on the field with a Mike Trout, and we're talking like the Rockies are the greatest franchise of all time.
Could you imagine like Rogers Center, Toronto Blue Jays? Like that place has gotten wild before for games. Could you imagine if they had Mike Trout? Like, I mean, yeah, it stinks. I feel for Angels fans.
We've talked about a lot of the hitting for the Padres. Their pitching staff isn't quite as it's not like looking at an all-star team to the same extent that the lineup is. There are some good guys there. Darvish we talked about a little bit. I think Snell is still there. Musgrove, I mean, prior to his tragic dumbbell accident. But then they had to go inside Michael Wacha towards kind of the end of spring, towards the end of the offseason, who I was honestly surprised lasted as long as he did. I thought he did very well with the Red Sox last year, and he might not be like a sub-3 ERA guy like he was most of the season, but he'll eat innings for you, and he's got that changeup, and a changeup is you're going to be able to take that with you for a while. So I thought that that was pretty smart on their end. But how's the depth behind that? Like, I know they've got Weathers, they've got, I guess Nick Martinez can start a little bit. But how do you see the pitching situation?
The pitching situation is weird. Granted, it's not at one of my longtime bits has been, because I'm an asshole. I make fun of people when they're like, we need another starter. It's like, yeah, well, so does every team, right? Like, you're not saying much. So I think you have to do it in layers and tiers, and I think the Padres are certainly not in like that DEFCON 1, oh my God, like an Angels team or like a Red Sox-ish team right now, right? Like those tiers where it's like, man, we could really use a starter. But they're certainly in like that third tier where they had a lot of health go right for them last year. You mentioned the dumbbell with Joe Musgrove. I think he's a psycho and might still pitch on opening day and find a way. I mean, this dude's crazy. Like he's wearing like something that just makes your neck super inflamed. Apparently during starts, that's what I think Andrew McCutcheon said, because that whole dumb cheating allegations that SNY was trying to push. Shouts to SNY. That there's potential that some health creeps up on them. Yu Darvish isn't getting any younger. Blake Snell has had some issues with health before. And Michael Wacha, like you said, is kind of just this innings eater. And all right, we at least have a 4. That's fine as a 4 guy. But the 5th spot, look, they say it's Nick Martinez. It could be Seth Lugo, who they signed and allegedly want to try using as a pitcher or a starting pitcher. I don't know how that's going to go. Maybe it's going to be a piggyback type of thing where their number 5 starter is actually 2 guys, right? Martinez does 2 innings, Lugo does 2 innings. That's what they count as their 5th starter. Totally possible there. Or there's some spring guys like to watch out for, like your Jay Grooms, who was acquired in the Eric Hosmer trade. Thank you, by the way. That's why I haven't hated Boston sports as much lately. I finally remembered you guys got rid of Eric Hosmer for us. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I appreciate it. That was
paid
great.
for him.
Yeah, I know we paid for him, but like
sweet.
I don't care. I just wanted him gone. I was so happy. So Jay Groom is a guy.
Now he's
looked all right.
DFA'd and not with us. So
Yeah, I know exactly.
he's a
So
Cub.
everyone won. Everyone won that one. It was great. So, and then you've got Jay Groom, who was acquired in the Hosmer trade. He's looked okay in spring training. Adrian Morejon, who is like super talented. Fastball velo's there. But it's just not, it hasn't been clicking. He got roughed up in spring the other day, and I'm worried about him. So the book might be out on him. There's a little bit of hope left, but kind of his last chance to prove it and whatnot. And then you've got, some kind of journeyman with Julio Teheran, whether or not he's going to give you anything. And he was good once upon a time, but I don't think he is anymore. So that 5th spot, and if there were an injury to happen, it does get a little scary, for sure, because the Padres don't have a lot of depth there, which is sometimes the price of admission for getting superstars, is that you're not going to have as much depth. But you look back and you're like, man, he's not that great of a pitcher, but it'd be really cool if they still had like Cal Quantrill right now. And the Mike Clevenger trade didn't go well for them at all. It's not going well for a lot of people in general. But Quantrill, you're like, not a great pitcher, but limits the walks, good control. That'd be awesome as a 5. You can just trust that, right? Or you can trust some of the other pitchers they've given up, and Eric Lauer, guys like that. So they have lost a lot of depth over the years. And I think it could become a problem. But it's also, every team's got problems, man. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. I'm still excited, but lasting through the season, 2021 second half, that became an issue. Vince Velasquez, Jake Arrieta, Ryan Weathers, when he was bad, like really bad, consistently giving up 6 runs a start, but they just didn't have anyone. That's the fear for this Padres team, I think.
Yeah, but that's only. Sorry, Brandon.
I was just gonna say, with all that being said, that's still better than somebody like a Tyson Ross being your 5th starter. Don't
talk ill of my boy Tyson Ross.
Tyson Ross had a good couple of years.
I know. I thought he was going to be so good. I thought it was like legit for real. And he had 2 years. I think he was an all-star 1 year. He had 2 years, but that was basically it for him. But I felt bad. He got hurt and banged up. But yeah, we've come a long way for sure. You Darvish, just having that guy on your team is just awesome. It's so much fun to watch him start. He's got like 25 pitches that he throws. He probably invented a new one over the course of since we've been recording this podcast. So love having that guy, but and a good bullpen from the Padres, a sneaky good bullpen that I think maybe may help alleviate a little bit of the starting pitching control problems and concerns.
I know is Suarez going to be the closer for them this year, or who's
still
going to be getting the bulk of the saves?
It's still going to be Hader.
Right.
There's been some talks that they might want to extend him too. That one I would rather not extend, but yeah, he's going to be the closer this year. He had a bad year last year, especially in the second half. He started falling apart. Showed some signs of getting back to it. Maybe he was so bad that it didn't make sense, right? Like, how sometimes guys are so pitching so poor, like, no, I don't believe this. Something's wrong here. You're going to be fine next year. Something just really heinous went wrong here. Maybe that's the case again. With... Yeah, do it again for me to believe it. I think that's kind of the 1-2 punch is Suarez and him. And then if Drew Pomeranz, the guy that you guys will be familiar with, if he can come back and be healthy, last 44 innings, that dude has a sub-2 ERA, great strikeout rate. When all it is health with him. You get those 3, mix and match. You've got Luis Garcia, who's pretty good too, but those 3, that could be special. That could be very, very special. I'm excited for it.
So whenever you mentioned that name, Drew Pomeranz, about half of our listeners just kind of did the ugh. Because he left such a sour taste in a lot of Red Sox fans' mouth. And he was so unreliable on that 2018 run that he didn't pitch in the World Series. They opted to have Chris Sale go out there and close games out. They opted to have Nathan Eovaldi pitch for 6 innings in extra innings instead of giving the ball to Drew Pomeranz.
But hey, it just shows you how much
so
time
good
changed,
in 2000.
right?
He had some good years for them. Like you can't. I don't know. Like I had forgotten about that with Pomeranz. Actually, Brandon, I had
Yeah,
completely forgotten that. That's because winning will make you forget about. Like people keep on reminding me that Ian Kinsler made like a big error in that extra innings game. I don't remember that. I just remember that they clinched a few days later.
Well, you know how I feel about Ryan Brazier. That's also how I felt about Drew Pomeranz. So I remember the visceral hatred that I had for him.
Do you have a visceral hatred for any Padres, Javier?
Not like a visceral like I hate you, because I reserve that for much more. And this isn't a slight at anyone, but like much more important people in the world in terms of just like who have a bigger impact. That's where I usually save my hatred for, and or people who have done like really bad off the field things.
Power.
Yeah, yeah, those guys, right?
You got something in my throat.
Yeah,
Sorry.
some former Padres, Mike Clevenger. You've got some questions around him and stuff like.
Well, Kurt Schilling, we can't really talk here. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like, and this isn't to say that I hate teams for having those players, or that people should you shouldn't root for your team anymore because they sign these guys, because then you get into a slippery slope of, well, I mean, every team's kind of had a bad guy, and I think that says more about culture and the world at large than it does a team sometimes. Don't get me wrong. Don't pull an Astros, right? Don't pull an Astros where you're yelling at female reporters about how you have Roberto Ozuna on your team. Like, there's ways to not be fully awful about it, right? That sometimes teams do. I think that Hosmer is the closest that I've had for a player that I just actively really strongly detested, for a bunch of reasons. Nothing off the field or anything like that, but just,
I have an off the field reason to hate Hosmer.
What's that?
I actually do. So, minding my own business on Twitter one day, and somebody says, like, oh, have you seen this? Like, Hosmer blocked me. I don't know what I did. And so I checked and I found Eric Hosmer blocked me as well. And, like, apparently, like, 95% of Red Sox fans. Did he block you too?
Welcome to the club, sir. I just found out the other day that my Padres account, not my personal account, which is tagged right here, was blocked by Eric Hosmer. And I don't know what it was, but I choose to believe it was the tweet when I said, in his last act of hatred against San Diego, Eric Hosmer killed Luke Voigt. For those who don't remember, Eric Hosmer had a no trade clause, and to the Nationals, he basically was like, nah. So then they had to give up Luke Voigt. So I was like, all right, so he killed this guy who was like, he had the little chest hair thing. He's doing it in front of kids, you know what I mean? And the kids are like, yeah. And he's doing like the beer gush, but like with water. And he was fun. A flawed player for sure. But it was really fun. And then he killed him. And I was like, this is really unfortunate. Don't get me wrong. I'd still, like, the Juan Soto thing makes it pretty worth it, I think. But I choose to believe that that's what he saw that pissed him off, and he decided, all right, I'm blocking this idiot.
Can you imagine him being like, I didn't kill Luke? This is slander.
Yeah, right? This is libelous. Like, what are you talking about? Hey, it's possible, right? It's possible. And it's funny because my own account, I've had much more funny memes and whatnot that were against him. So, yeah, I mean, Hosmer, definitely Hosmer, I would say. I can't really think of another one. And granted, this isn't like a hate thing. I'm sure he's a fine guy and whatnot, from what I've heard. Just as a Padre, really frustrating experience.
Yeah, that's a lot of people on the Red Sox last year. But, I feel like every team has that, though. There's one guy that always ends up being, like, when something bad happens, you know that he's going to be involved with it.
The scapegoat.
Yeah.
Scapegoat implies they did nothing wrong. Hosmer knows what he did.
You know what you did.
Fair point.
I know what you're saying about scapegoat. Like, that's one thing about Pods fans. Sometimes it got a little bit out of control where it was like, yeah, I really don't like him either, but this isn't the only player that's performing poorly. The entire team fell apart in 2021. Managers, right? Like, they get scapegoated all the time. Coaches of any sport, like, just constantly. It's actually pretty remarkable. Just ask any coach that's had LeBron James as a player, right? Which, don't get me wrong, great. It's worth it, right? It works. What he does works. But there's been a couple coaches, your David Blatz, your, I forgot the guy who was on the Lakers last year. But that dude, he was on the Pacers coach. I'm blanking on his name, but, you get scapegoats out there, and it's unfortunate. But with Hosmer, it was like, man, just all these little crumbs, not going on any media shows, ignoring, radio station calls, and then get snapping at the first reporter who asks you about trade rumors, right? Like it's just a lot of bad vibes, and then not performing well, and having some of the weirdest errors at first base I've ever seen. Like this isn't like, oh, he couldn't scoop it. This is like, does he know how to play the position? Like, are we sure? Like, if you don't speak up, man, like, what I mean? Like, let us know. There was a couple moments like that, but yeah, Hosmer, thankfully, is not on the Padres anymore, and just all good vibe players at the moment.
It's interesting that you say that because I don't know if because of like his age he's been able to dodge it, but Fernando Tatis, I mean, that was a bit of a circus with him last year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whew. I mean,
like what's the fan base, what's the outlook on him this season?
So it went from, there was like I think like two phases with it. I'd say the first phase was, wow, like, or three phases actually. So it was like when he gets back, can you imagine, right? And that was a real thing. Like this is, and I think that's why you had so many Padres players that were coming out very publicly about like how disappointed they were in him. Because I think that there was this feeling of, wow, you traded for Soto. And in fairness, Josh Bell and Brandon Drury at the time, they didn't do well, but it's like, this is what they do, and we're going to get you back too. Like, and then we find out about this. You're literally in the middle of rehab games in the minors, and then this news comes out. It just sucks so much life out of the air. And granted, shows you how unpredictable sports are. They still end up having a really great playoff run, but I think that was part of it. And then you had the whole like fan base being like, we hate him now. He's a cheater. What a knucklehead. I think he's a big Dumbo goober. And that doesn't mean I hate him. I just think that he's a kid who made a really heinous, awful mistake, deserves to be roasted. And quite honestly, yeah, if the Dodgers fans, don't get me wrong, you guys have had bad cheaters and whatnot before, but them booing him, yeah, I mean, it's deserved. I mean, you hurt your team a lot and you did something that you're not supposed to do. Now, I would be careful to make sure you separate being a goober idiot from being an actual jerk and bad human being. Right, you got to be a little bit careful to do that, in my opinion, when you talk about these things. And that was phase 2. And then phase 3 is Padres fans yelling at everybody who think that he might have a little bit of trouble when he comes back. Like in terms of his talent, his play. Where Fangraphs did this like article that was just getting quote tweeted to oblivion, and everyone was like yelling at the writer because he was like, I don't think he'll be as amazing immediately his first year.
Which,
relax, guys. That's not even that mean of a take. Go yell at the Mets broadcasters who are saying Musgrove definitely cheated. No, that's bad. They're like, oh, his WRC plus. Here's a bunch of players, really well researched, here who had the same injury. It goes down by 10, 15 points. Maybe for him it'll be more. Maybe it'll be less. Oh, wow. Yeah, guys. Such a horrible thing for a professional writer to say Tatis will have a 125-29 WRC plus maybe his first year. Wow. Awful. It's like, come on, guys. Like, it's totally reasonable. And I think that's phase 3. So they're back. Everyone's back. They're like, we love this guy again. And in fairness, him and Ohtani are kind of the faces of the sport when they're right. So, I mean, it's easy to understand.
That is the thing is like, look back to 2021, whenever Manny first joined the Padres and all that stuff. That did become kind of like, oh, Tatis could be the face of baseball. He's making that leaping grab that everybody instantly took like the picture of and put it on T-shirts and stuff like that.
The Air Tatis thing, yeah.
Yeah, the Air Tatis logo. That became a thing, and it was like Tatis is one of the faces. Ohtani having his MVP season, he's one of the faces of baseball. And it seemed like West Coast baseball was starting to take over. And then with the whole issues with Tatis, it seems like that kind of died out for him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem to get the attention nationally that he did at one time. It's crazy. And now him moving off of his position in favor of a guy that was brought in this offseason. It's who knows? Yeah.
I mean, we'll have to see how he plays, but I think you might get a little bit more humbled guy, at least at the beginning. I hope that it's that way at the beginning and that he gets right back after he's proven himself, whenever that may be, in a season, in 2 seasons, whatever. Because when he is doing the staring at the ball, staring at his dugout, bat flipping, and matrix dodging stuff, like this guy makes the most routine plays look so exciting. Sliding into first base or second base, stealing bases, running around, the bat flips, all that stuff. He's got it. And it's it's something that you can't really learn. I feel like this swagger that he has is just so different. I mean, the cover of MLB The Show. I mean, like this is the guy, and I think that if he comes back and is healthy, and he earns his way back, I choose to believe that we're in a generation of baseball where people will mock you for the steroids, but I don't think they treat you like you're Satan the way that I think that they used to once upon a time, where you're going to be ostracized, right? And I think after a little bit, people will be like, there's worse things than taking cholesterol to try and get healthier sooner. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's worse things out there.
Javi, you just said something that it just clicked in my head. You know how the Madden curse has existed for years, where the cover on Madden, they end up injured and all that stuff. Yeah. I'm starting to see a trend in the MLB The Show cover athletes.
Yep.
Tatis was the cover athlete, and now he's playing in the outfield. This year's cover athlete, Jazz Chisholm, was an infielder. Now he's playing in the outfield. Is that going to be the thing going forward? Is if you're the cover athlete, you better get ready to play a new position?
It's funny because I actually did an article on this for a website that doesn't do stuff anymore, Baseball FY, about the past bunch of years on the cover athletes. And it's kind of like, it's mixed, right? Like there's some where it's like Yasiel Puig. Nope, that did not go well. And then there's others where it's like Ryan Howard. Literally won the World Series the next year, or this past year, Shohei Ohtani. Like some guys do avoid it, but you have had like and Tatis, not just in terms of not playing well, like Yasiel Puig, but you also have all the off the field stuff too, right? And then, so it's really mixed. It's really mixed. Josh Donaldson was 1 year. There's been a couple. Like I blanking on every MLB The Show's person, so it's a little bit up and down. I think I don't know. Jazz Chisholm is an inspired choice because of the personality and whatnot. No idea what that guy's going to do. I just have no idea. He might be awesome, and it'll inflate his status, and that would be great for the sport. But yeah, I mean, Padres got hit pretty hard with a cover show case for sure.
Is he going to be? Is he in center field or right field or like what's? Because like Grisham's a really good outfielder. Also,
yeah.
I feel like
it looks like it's going to be right field for now. Obviously, these things can change, and depending on injury, if anything were to happen to Kim or Bogarts, like. Great, like Tatis can go play that for you if you need it, even if not always great defensively shortstop. Yeah, I think it's right field for now. I know people love tossing around the error he made in spring training. He also made a nice catch, so it's. I'm not going to assume just because he has great arm strength and super duper athleticism that he's going to be good. But I'm also not going to assume that he's going to be bad. I don't really know. Like we just don't know. So that's going to be like one of the biggest storylines when he comes back for sure.
Yeah, and it's also just go ahead. I was just going to say, I mean, there's a trial and error period, too. He's been an infielder his whole career, and now has to learn a new position. So, like, he's going to have to make a few mistakes.
Exactly.
For me personally, I think it's brilliant to stack your team with these guys that are shortstops. All of us growing up playing baseball, the shortstop on your team was traditionally the best player on your team. So why not fill your roster with these guys, especially in an era now when we don't have the shift?
Yeah.
Why not have these shortstops all over your infield that can cover? Oh, and by the way, we also have a shortstop that's going to be playing right field. So if we do have a guy that's, a pull hitter, but not necessarily a power threat, we can shift him up to play that shift position and just bring our center fielder over a little bit more. And it just, you guys will have a built-in shift.
Yeah.
Was that at all a reference to the Red Sox drafting like 5 shortstops last year?
Dude, I've been saying ever since they announced that they were trying to get rid of the shift, that you should stack 2 shortstops. When Trevor Story signed with the Boston Red Sox, I was ecstatic because I thought they were doing just that, bringing in two all-star caliber shortstops. And last year, until he got hurt, it looked pretty good because he was playing a Gold Glove second base.
Mm-hmm. The defense is great on Story. That part had nothing to do with Coors.
Yeah. So I definitely think that having multiple shortstops is amazing.
Thanks, Let me ask you, speaking of talented shortstops, there was one guy that kept coming up in trade rumors specifically with the Red Sox last year or last offseason, and that was Hae-Sung Kim. Because, you have Bogarts and Tatis, who are both shortstops. Manny Machado could probably still play a decent shortstop if you really wanted to. It almost seemed like he was just like an extra player. And the Red Sox had a guy in Tanner Houck that really could have potentially fit in with those rotation needs. Deal didn't get done for whatever reason, but the talks were like they were pretty real talks.
Real.
Do you think that Kim is going to be like, if they need something at the deadline, he's the guy that gets traded? Or do you like where do you see his role? Because I know he's at second base now, but they have Cronenworth also, right?
Yeah, Cronenworth looks like he's going to play first base for now. And I guess if they had to, you could probably play a Carpenter or Nelson Cruz, especially there if they had to. It's a good question though. There was a little bit of rumbling. Some people thought the Grisham and Hassan Kim for Pablo Lopez was the type of thing that people were thinking might happen. From what I heard from sources, that wasn't really ever all that close to happening. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't seem like that was an actual thing from what I had heard. So I think that for the most part, that's not going to happen. If they're having a great season, they probably aren't going to want to get rid of Hassan Kim. You know what I mean? Like, I think they're just kind of want to just keep it and have that great utility infielder who, yeah, his bat leaves a little bit to be desired, but he improved last year. And with more time, it's not impossible that he gets a little bit better too this year. So I think Hassan Kim is a fascinating player, super electric to watch, super fast, which is great. Has a rocket arm, quick release, all that stuff. It's great. I love watching him play. But yeah, it's not impossible. But I think it would also come out of desperation. If the Padres aren't doing well at the deadline, they might say, all right, you know what? Bogarts, you can play second. Tatis will move you in. We're going to go trade for Brian Reynolds, right? Who's a player that I hate bringing up because he's been talked about like he's Mickey Mantle and has been in trade rumors for like 5 years. So I hate that guy. But like, it's not impossible. They're like, all right, Brian Reynolds will go to left field and Soto goes back to right. They might get desperate. I don't think it's something they should do, though. You know what I mean? But I think it's possible based out of desperation if they aren't doing all that well and Preller tries to make a splash.
I thought you were going to say if they're not doing well at the trade deadline, they're going to trade Xander Bogaerts, which would have been hilarious. Hilarious take.
I don't even know what you would get back for him there.
This guy.
Yeah, they're like, suckers. The 3D chess, we actually signed him to this deal so we could trade him and screw over another team. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, trade him to the Dodgers. Trade him to the Dodgers for Mookie Betts. That would make Boston Red Sox fans' heads explode if that ever happened.
Oh man. Yeah, that'd be pretty rough. And as Brad mentions in the chat, yeah, I mean they do need a shortstop right now. So
that's true. Gavin Lux going down was big.
Yeah. Mookie could do it. You can put Mookie in any position and he'll figure it out.
He's playing second for USA.
Yeah. I would trust Mookie to run a rocket ship if I had to. I would trust that man to do anything. If we're in like an emergency landing and the pilot is gone, he could land that plane. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just trust Mookie Betts to do anything. That guy's such a beast.
He almost quit baseball after his first professional season.
I don't know
because he didn't do very well.
He loves bowling, though.
He always has bowling, but he was going to go back to college on like a scholarship and play basketball.
He's just one of those like freak athletes who are like unbelievable, and he just happens to be in baseball. Yeah, just absolutely nutty stuff.
Yeah, no, we're lucky to have him. So I've got one final question for you.
Go for it.
Apropos nothing, what's your prediction for the Padres win-loss record?
I think they get 94 wins. I think that their division is secretly pretty tough. I think San Fran will battle a little bit.
Arizona's
I like the additions they
either.
made. And then, yeah, Arizona, not bad. Especially if they get the right guys with your Merrick Kelly and Zach Gallen and then Corbin Carroll obviously being like the big prospect kind of guy this year. That team can be interesting. And then obviously you have the Dodgers. And just in general, a tough National League to kind of battle against. You've got Philly, obviously they're in the World Series, then you've got Atlanta, then you've got the Mets, but I think it's about 94 wins, and that's going to be fine. That's going to be good. That'll get you into the postseason. That's what really matters. Make it into the postseason. If you win the division, that'd be great, but that's kind of where I'm thinking. I think people have been a little bit too down on the Dodgers, too. I know they didn't do too much, but they still deserve a lot of benefit of the doubt, considering they've been consistently like a 100 win expected team for like 8 years, pretty much. So don't be too down on them just because they didn't make the big splash. They're going to do that next year with Ohtani anyway, so.
Yeah,
wrong. He's coming to Boston.
It would be something. It would surely be a twist, a plot twist, if he went back there.
You got anything else, Brandon?
No, man, I'm good. Javi, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno. If you don't like some of my occasional non-baseball, comic book movie tweets or whatever, you can check out at LO_Padres on Twitter, where I tweet about the Padres all the time. Locked On Padres on YouTube, if you want to see my face and Tatis's bobblehead face. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And go subscribe to the pod.
Great user handle, by the way.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
Finally,
That's someone
one of the
says
best.
it. Yes, it's the best on the Locked On network, I will say. And best on any network. The Just Baseball, where I write, you know what I mean? I write that at that website. Great website. Better than all those guys, I think. And how often the pod it is daily. Not today, though. I missed today's. But yeah, it's daily, especially during the season, doing game recaps and all that stuff and playing crossovers. So it's a lot of fun.
So this appearance on the Pesky Report is your daily
essentially,
podcast.
Yeah.
For
essentially,
okay.
yeah. I'm on episode 585, I think, for total. How many episodes I've done? So yeah, I've done a lot, man. I've done a lot. During the off season, it's 3 days a week. That's why some of the numbers is done.
Your vacation time.
Yeah, the little vacation time where I'm like, all right, let's react to the news of the day that some player made a funny TikTok. Like it could get a little bit rough sometimes during the offseason, but we do it out here because it's the Padres and it's fun.
Not for you guys because you signed a new player every other day in the
Exactly.
offseason. So it was all good.
It's much worse to do daily shows for like the Colorado Rockies. My boy there who does it is like, he just looks really rough sometimes. He looks like the freaking characters in Room. Like he's just like ruined. I feel so bad for the guy. I don't know what you do there.
Oh man. Well, on that note, we will be back. We've got a guy from the Dodgers next week. We're gonna have we've got a White Sox person coming on. Keep it going, and thank you again so much, Brandon and Javier, for being here with me today. We'll see you all next time.
It's a blast, man.